Is it possible that the disrespect you are facing right now isn't a problem with her, but a structural failure in you? Behavioral observations suggest that most men don't lose their relationships because of a lack of kindness, but because of a lack of foundation. When you walk into a room, does the energy shift to match yours, or do you scan the faces of others to see how you should feel? Psychological patterns show that the moment a man becomes emotionally fragile, he becomes invisible to the woman he loves. You think you are being supportive by giving in to every whim, but you are actually dissolving the very strength she needs to feel secure. A bulletproof frame is the psychological ability to remain the captain of your own internal state, regardless of the storms she creates. If you don't build this fortress, you are essentially inviting her to walk over you. We are going to dive deep into the neurology of authority and why your need for approval is the lethal injection that kills her attraction. We will look at why nice guys are actually the most manipulative because they trade compliance for safety, and how to stop being a consumer of validation and start being a generator of value. I'm not here to argue with the world about what a real man is. I'm here for the men who are quietly trying to get their lives together, the ones rebuilding, the ones learning discipline the hard way, the ones who got knocked down and decided to stand back up. If you're working on yourself, even if nobody sees it, this channel is for you. Subscribe if you're serious about growth. Leave a comment so I know you're here. No noise, no hype, just men doing the work. The first psychological barrier to building a bulletproof frame is the approval dependency. Behavioral observations suggest that many men enter relationships seeking a mother figure in a lover's body. They check their phone constantly for a good morning text and feel a pit in their stomach if her tone sounds slightly cold or short. This is a state of emotional tethering. Psychological patterns show that this creates a subordinate frame. You are essentially asking for permission to be okay. When a woman senses that your emotional stability is in her hands, she instinctively feels unsafe. Why? Because a woman cannot lean on a man who is leaning on her for his sense of self. You are the victim of validation addiction when you think keeping the peace is the same as leading the way. True frame is the ability to say, I hope you are happy, but my mission for the day remains unchanged regardless of your mood. We must also examine the architecture of the test. Behavioral patterns show that women perform congruency tests, often called shit tests, not to be mean, but to see if the man she is with is actually as solid as he pretends to be. She might criticize your outfit, be late for a date, or bring up an ex just to see if your internal compass shakes or if you lose your cool. Psychological observations suggest that if you argue, explain, or get angry, you have failed the test. Why? Because an explanation is an apology for your existence. It shows that she has power over your logic. A man with a bulletproof frame doesn't react, he absorbs. He treats the chaos like a small child throwing a tantrum. He remains stoic because he knows his value isn't up for negotiation by anyone. You are the victim of reactive frailty when you let her temporary emotions dictate your permanent actions. Let's look at the path of Marcus. Marcus was a man who prided himself on being the perfect partner. He was a provider, a fixer, and a listener. When he met Sarah, he treated her like a goddess. If Sarah was upset about her job, Marcus would spend 3 hours validating her, even if it meant he didn't finish his own work. He stopped going to the gym on Tuesday nights because Sarah said she felt lonely when he was gone for 2 hours. He even deleted his female friends from social media because Sarah said they made her uncomfortable. Marcus thought he was building a healthy relationship through sacrifice.
Marcus is the loser in our story because he mistook compliance for connection. Because Marcus had no frame, Sarah felt no biological tension or respect for him. To her, he wasn't a king, he was a butler. Eventually, the lack of respect turned into contempt. Sarah started testing him more brutally, forgetting to tell him where she was, comparing him to other men, and eventually she started an emotional affair with a man from her past who treated her with zero priority. When Marcus finally found out, he didn't stand up, he collapsed. He asked her, "What did I do wrong? I gave you everything." He was a victim of the sacrifice fallacy, believing that giving up yourself would make her love you more. In reality, the more he gave up, the more repulsed she became. He lost because he tried to buy loyalty with submission, not realizing that loyalty is only given to those who cannot be bought. The third pillar of frame is the non-negotiable mission. Behavioral observations suggest that a man without a purpose outside of his woman is a dangerous man to have in a house. Why? Because he becomes smothering. Psychological patterns show that if the relationship is the biggest thing in your universe, you will naturally become clingy, paranoid, and insecure. A bulletproof frame comes from having a mountain to climb. Whether it is your business, your physical transformation, or your craft, that mission must come before the comfort of the woman. When a woman sees that you are willing to walk away from a conversation to go finish your work, she realizes that she is a beautiful addition to your empire, not the reason the empire exists. You are the victim of purpose displacement when you make a partner your God instead of making God or growth your partner. Furthermore, we must address the biology of the sovereign male. Behavioral observations suggest that a man who enforces a boundary and holds his ground, his testosterone levels and internal confidence rise naturally. When he succumbs to emotional blackmail or aggression, his cortisol, the stress hormone, spikes, and he enters a submissive state. Psychological observations suggest that women are evolutionarily wired to scan for this state. If she can bully you into changing your mind about your values, she subconsciously knows you cannot protect her from the harshness of reality. You think you are being a good guy, but your body language is telling her you are defeated. You are the victim of relational submission when you trade your self-respect for 5 minutes of quiet. We also need to look at the paradox of availability. Behavioral observations suggest that a man who is always available has a frame that is always open for infringement. If you answer every text in 10 seconds, if you cancel your boys' night because she had a bad day, you are devaluing your own time. Psychological patterns show that people value what is scarce. If your time is cheap, your presence becomes cheap. A bulletproof frame requires you to be protective of your schedule. You are not an on-call service. You are a high-value asset. You are the victim of temporal desperation when you think being always there makes you irreplaceable, when it actually makes you ignorable. The reality is that frame is not about dominating her. It is about dominating the weakness in yourself. Behavioral observations suggest that a woman will push against a wall just to make sure it won't fall on her. If you collapse every time she pushes, she has to keep pushing to find where the edge is. You are the guardian of the boundary. If the guardian is asleep or desperate for a hug, the boundary is useless. Building a bulletproof frame is the final act of sovereignty. It is the moment you decide that your standard of living, your standard of respect, and your personal mission are non-negotiable laws of your personal universe. You have to understand that the frame is the atmosphere you carry with you. If your atmosphere is peace, power, and purpose, people will adopt to it. If your atmosphere is neediness and fear, people will exploit it. Behavioral observations show that infidelity and betrayal rarely happen to a man with an iron frame because he has already filtered out low-value behavior long before it reached his inner circle. He is a man who doesn't ask for respect. He requires it as the condition for his presence.
Holds himself accountable. The one who can say no to distractions, not because someone told him to, but because he decided to. If you're not ready to work on yourself, this won't resonate. But if you are, you belong here. Most people watch and move on. If you're different, subscribe and comment. Show yourself you're serious. The fourth pillar of a bulletproof frame is the mastery of outcome independence. Behavioral observations suggest that the power in any relationship belongs to the person who needs it less. Psychological patterns show that if you are terrified of her leaving, you will subconsciously cede your authority to keep her. This is the scarcity trap. Outcome independence is the internal truth that you will be fine regardless of her choices. This isn't arrogance, it is abundance. When you operate from a place of self-sufficiency, your frame becomes unshakable because it cannot be blackmailed with the threat of loss. You no longer argue to win her over. You simply state your terms and let her choose to align or depart. You are the victim of attachment anxiety when you treat a human being like your only source of happiness. A man with a solid frame knows that his life is a complete meal, and the relationship is merely the dessert. If the dessert is bitter, he simply stops eating it. We must also look at the enforcement of the silence. Behavioral patterns show that low-frame men talk far too much. They explain their feelings until they're blue in the face. They defend their basic rights, and they beg for understanding from a person who has already lost respect for them. Psychological observations suggest that silence is the ultimate weapon of the sovereign man. When a woman disrespects you or crosses a non-negotiable line, you don't need a lecture. You need a withdrawal of attention. Attention is the energy of the relationship. When you stop the payment, the chaos loses its audience. This is strategic disengagement. You are the victim of verbal dilution when you try to talk a woman into respecting you. Respect is earned through the boundaries you keep in silence, never through the arguments you have in vain. Every word you use to defend your position is a point you have already lost. Let's look at the path of Elias. Elias was a man who understood the cost of access. When he started dating Clara, he made it clear that his Tuesday and Thursday nights were dedicated to his boxing gym and business planning, and his phone went into Do Not Disturb at 10 p.m. Clara tried to infiltrate this routine. She would call him during his training sessions with small dramas that weren't real. She would cry that he didn't care about her feelings because he wouldn't stay up until 2 a.m. to text her. Elias didn't get angry. He didn't give her a speech. He simply stayed true to his schedule. When she confronted him and called him cold, he simply looked her in the eye and said, "I told you my mission and my schedule. If that doesn't fit your needs, I respect that, but I won't change who I am to satisfy a temporary emotion." Elias is the winner in our story because he practiced the sovereign choice. By being willing to lose her to keep himself, he actually made Clara value him more. She realized that Elias was a fixed point in an unstable world. Her testing turned into admiration. She stopped fighting the boundary and started organizing her life to fit into his excellence. Elias won because he realized that a woman wants to be part of a man's life, but she wants that life to be inflexible in its commitment to growth. Today, Elias has a partner who guards his time because she knows that access to him is a privilege, not a right. He was a master of internal consistency, proving that his dignity is not a negotiable asset. He didn't fix Clara, he fixed the rulebook of his life. The fifth pillar is the audit of the emotional budget. Behavioral observations suggest that many men overinvest in a rotted relationship. They give 100% of their devotion to a woman who is giving 10% of her interest. Psychological patterns show that this imbalance kills desire. To build a bulletproof frame, you must practice matching energy. If she is cold, you are productive. If she is distant, you are unavailable. You never overcompensate for her withdrawal by trying harder. This keeps the responsibility of maintenance on both parties. You are the victim of relational subsidizing when you pay the emotional rent for two people while she lives for free. A man with a frame knows that effort must be reciprocal. If the return on investment is negative, he liquidates the asset. Furthermore, we must address the finality of the exit. Behavioral patterns show that a frame is as strong as the consequence that supports it.
If you say, "I will not tolerate infidelity," and she betrays you and you stay to fix it, your frame is dissolved. You have shown her that your rules have exceptions. Psychological observations suggest that a sovereign man has a high-standard, low-drama policy. You don't negotiate with character flaws, you exit the scene. The certainty that you are capable of leaving and never looking back is what creates the gravity of your presence. You are the victim of empty threats when your voice is loud but your actions are weak. A man who cannot leave is a prisoner, and a prisoner can never be a leader.
The sixth pillar is the stoic response to chaos. Behavioral observations suggest that when a woman is testing the frame, she will often use emotional escalation, crying, yelling, or accusations of not caring. Psychological patterns show that if you enter the storm with her and start yelling back, you have lost. You have lowered yourself to her frequency. A bulletproof frame is the ability to look at chaos and remain completely still. You are the mountain, and she is the wind. The wind may blow, but the mountain does not move. When she sees that her emotions cannot control your peace, she stops using emotion as a weapon and starts using it as a communication tool. You are the victim of emotional hijacking when you let someone else drive your nervous system. We must also look at the rejection of the guilt trip. Behavioral patterns show that a common tactic to break a man's frame is to make him feel guilty for his success or his boundaries. She might say, "You care more about your work than me." A man with a weak frame will apologize and withdraw from his mission. A man with a bulletproof frame recognizes this as a priority test. He knows that if he abandons his mission for her, she will eventually abandon him because he is no longer the man she respected. Psychological observations suggest that your refusal to feel guilty for your excellence is the glue that keeps the frame intact. You are the victim of moral manipulation when you let her needs override your values. The seventh pillar is the social frame. Behavioral observations suggest that your frame isn't just for your relationship, it's for the world. How you treat the waiter, how you handle conflict with men, and how you carry yourself in public all feeds into her perception of your strength. If you are a lion in the bedroom but a sheep in the boardroom, she will detect the inconsistency. Psychological patterns show that a woman wants a man who is respected by other men. When you command the room, you command her heart. You are the victim of fragmented authority when you think you can segment your strength. Frame is universal. The final realization is the sovereignty of the self. Behavioral patterns show that the ultimate frame is built when a man realizes he is the center of his own universe. This isn't selfishness, it's stability. When you are the source of your own direction, you become magnetic. People want to orbit a star that is bright and steady. Psychological observations suggest that infidelity and betrayal are repelled by this high-gravity frame. A woman who knows you are self-sovereign knows that disrespect is the fastest way to become a memory. The reality is that the world will break any man who doesn't have an internal skeleton to support his values. Behavioral observations suggest that life is a continuous pressure test. If your frame is soft, you will collapse under the weight of relationship betrayal and social manipulation. Building a bulletproof frame is the work of a lifetime, but it is the only work that ensures your freedom. It is the metamorphosis from a victim of circumstance to a master of self. You are the king of your internal realm. If you don't govern it with iron discipline, someone else will tax it with endless drama and broken promises. I have a smart question for the men who have the sovereign fortitude to finish this session on the construction of the frame. If you were the architect of a great dam holding back a massive river, would you leave the gates open just because the water was begging to get through? Or would you keep the gates locked to ensure the valley below isn't destroyed by the flood?
You are the architect. The dam is your frame. The valley is your future. Stop opening the gates for emotional floods that seek to wash away your hard work. Drop a comment below and tell the Brotherhood what was the one boundary you finally set and kept that changed the way she treated you forever. How did it feel the first time you realized that your silence was more powerful than your shouting? Share your frame blueprints. Your discipline might be the inspiration a brother needs to stop begging for love and start requiring respect. Let's build the Council of Sovereign Men together. If you made it all the way to the end, I genuinely appreciate you. That tells me you're not just watching, you're thinking, you're reflecting, you're working on yourself. And you're not alone in that anymore. There's a community here of men choosing growth over excuses. If this message gave you something valuable, subscribe and be part of it. Leave a comment, I read them, and your voice matters here. Keep doing the work. I'll see you in the next one.